Hey, what's going on, guys? Mike here. I have a special guest inside of our mini studio in Heber City, Utah. We've done a lot of things in hunting, and a lot of you guys don't know kind of the inner workings and relationships that we have with businesses across the U.S. in different spaces and genres. I've been working with Scott on doing the podcast, Eastman's Elevated, for a while now. But in the house today, we have Ike Eastman and Scott from Eastmans Hunting Journal, Eastman's Elevated. What else we have?
We got like 7 other Eastmans
everything.
Hunting TV, Eastman's Bow Hunting Journal, Fieldcraft, Wingman. Yeah, there's a ton.
Your last name is Eastman.
Yes, sir.
And this is something you grew up in. This has been your life since you were brought into the world.
Yes.
For people who don't know the hunting space, don't know about the journal, tell them kind of how you came into it and your family's legacy on the journal itself and everything you guys do.
Okay. I'll back up to my grandfather, Gordon Eastman. He started filming in Alaska in 1957, filming wildlife, and he would bring those films, 35 millimeter camera films, and he would bring those back to the lower 48 and live narrate them. And so he was in high school auditoriums and movie theaters, and he would live narrate the filming he had taken that fall or that summer. And it kind of grew for a couple years, and to the point where he had a life-size polar bear that he would put on stage with him. So you can imagine a 6-foot guy and a 12-foot bear on a stand, standing behind him, and he's live narrating. So these people had never seen, a Dall sheep or a caribou or a polar bear. And it went from that to him building theatricals, wildlife, outdoor theatricals. He lived in Hollywood for a number of years, filmed for Walt Disney, a lot of their wildlife. And then he took those theatricals in the early 80s, for those of us that are old enough to remember Blockbusters and what VHS stores used to be. He'd take that's what my dad got. So my dad was in Vietnam while he was doing all that. He was 2 tours in Vietnam, and then he came back and was an outfitter in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And then in the 80s, they took these theatricals and they went all over the country and sold these VHS tapes to video stores. And then people would come in and rent the videos. My dad was sitting in a show in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania in the mid 80s, and people from Pennsylvania would come up to him and oh, you're out west. Yeah, man, I really dream about hunting elk or hunting deer or whatever out west. I really want to do that, but man, I just don't know where to start, and it's just so much. They didn't realize that most of the West is public land, that they have access to it. It's theirs. They can go and recreate on it. And so he started this pamphlet, flyer, that just gave him some simple information on how to start hunting out west. And at the early years, he wrote the first one, and it's just like articles by Mike Eastman. So he came up with pen names and all kinds of stuff. And it turned in, that was 1987, and he turned into Eastman's Hunting Journal, which is today, and that also he spun off Eastman's Bow Hunting Journal, and then we have the Eastman's Hunting TV, which has been on the Outdoor Channel for 20 years. I bought the company from him in 2008, and I took those traditional medias and I added the digital component to it. So we started Eastman Elevated, we started Beyond the Grid, which is our YouTube online TV show. We started Wingman, which is our wing shooting, birds, turkeys, ducks, geese division. We started Flycast, which is our fly fishing. And it's all centered around what people do out west. And we're informing you on how to do it, how to become, if you're a novice, how to start. If you're experienced, there's always something you can learn. So we inform you in an entertaining way, because obviously reading a textbook is boring. And then we inspire you to take that next step. And trophy hunting is really progressive. I use the word trophy on purpose because trophy is, in the English language, it is what we use to signify success. It's the Vince Lombardi trophy for the Super Bowl. It's the medal you get for running a marathon. It is a symbol of success. A trophy in hunting, to me, a trophy is a symbol of success. Matching wits with a mature animal in their environment, which they stack, God has stacked the deck against you. They have 6 times the senses that you do. Smell, hearing, eyesight, knowing what's on the other side of the ridge. And let's be honest, an elk can outrun you 10 times every day. I mean, they're just a big animal, deer, antelope. And so we did all of that to help the common guy. And it's been a long run and a lot of fun. And we're just excited to be here with you and talk about the survival side. We prepare for success often, and I'm included in this. We forget to prepare for when things go bad, and I know here at Fieldcraft that's what you guys do.
Yeah, I actually doing these guys' podcast and talking to the main guy who hosts the podcast,
Brian Barney. Yep.
Amazing bow hunter, has a lot of experience in the backcountry. And he was talking to me about kind of the industry and space and the things the deficiencies he sees in just the everyday hunter to even some of the backwoods, backcountry, survivalist kind of guys who are neglecting some of the basic skill sets. But you don't know until you find out the hard way in a lot of ways, right? Our focus has been preparedness in that sense. Scott, I want to talk about your role in the company and also some of the things that you have to do to navigate messaging and marketing, et cetera, especially with a lot of miseducation and disinformation coming out against hunting and all that it's worth.
So my role at Eastmans, I started there 7 years ago, just had a 7-year anniversary. Ike tasked me with, number one, building the digital department. So take anything and everything that was digital, grow it, make it bigger. Let's find opportunities to be inside that space. And so a lot of what Ike just listed off, we launched together. Like those were projects that I was tasked with, getting them off the ground. I get them off the ground a lot of times and hand off and train. And then I also have now the role of business development, developing relationships. So, it was kind of natural. Like I was dabbling in the sales side of the business when I messaged you, because I'm like, oh, look at this company, it's Fieldcraft Survival. Then you and I kind of hit it off, talked on the phone. You called me like immediately when I talked about the podcast. And so we, that sort of developed that relationship, and it's evolved into this, where you sent members of your team to go on a hunt with us. We filmed, we co-marketed, we co-branded it. And so that's one of the things that we work with. A lot of people, there's a lot of people who want to jump into being an influencer and things like that, and they immediately jump right back out because they don't realize that takes some of the joy away from hunting, or it can if you're not prepared for what that actually is. I actually freelanced before we came here. In fact, Ike was able to check on my references because of my freelancing. Some of that was a kind of a funny story. And then you find out that, hey, Ike called and checked on you, checked your reference. Oh, really? And so there's some of that. And so we navigate a lot of things. Like there's that, and social media, this is case in point. People it's a dream. They think they want to go and hunt for a living. Then it kind of takes away from that because it quits becoming about hunting. So there's that navigation on a personal level. But then on the other side, there's a whole bunch of people who look at that and they judge it. They look at that and they say, well, I don't understand why you want to kill something, while they're, flipping over their steak at home, salting it up to put it on the grill. They think that clean steak that they got literally came from the grocery store, like it was manufactured there. And I'm not exaggerating. That sounds really stupid to those of us in the know that there's a whole ranching industry out there that is providing steaks for people to eat and consume. And so there's an education piece where I want to know where my meat comes from. On a personal level, I want to know where everything that I'm going to feed me and then 3 kids, 4th on the way, I want to know where that came from. My mom grew up on a farm, so there's also the agriculture side. So I get the growing your own food. We tried to grow our own food. We were terrible at it, so we decided to stick to acquiring the meat. But on that end, I know what my kids are eating. I know exactly where that animal came from. The only part of it that I didn't touch directly is when I choose to drop it off at the butcher, but I still know the weight. I saw that, and I want that weight to be comparable to what it should be when I did that. And I won't go to just any butcher. We've had that discussion too.
There's a lot of fly-by-night guys that you drop it off and go, gosh, I hope they don't put methamphetamines in there or something.
I know. Well, what's crazy about the hunting industry as a whole is, now it seems because of media, maybe social media, in fact, it seems like there's a little bit more forward movement in the right direction.
There is.
But what I've seen in this space between, I don't know what it would be called, but maybe the meat eater version of hunting versus the trophy, that there's some kind of inner workings and debate, because there's, again, the misunderstanding of what things are. And you guys have talked about it. We've had conversations outside the podcast about the word trophy and all that it stands for. And I think it'd be wise, one, you educated me, because when I hear trophy, I think the millionaire who goes to safaris and kills Bengal tigers and kills all these beautiful animals and doesn't source the meat and waste a lot of things. But I feel like that's a stigma or stereotype that I haven't defined. I really haven't. It almost feels like an urban myth to me. But you talked about it specifically in why you won't go away from the word trophy that you grew up in, that was part of your life. Can you explain some of that?
Yeah, so there's and I think a lot of the media did it on purpose, but unintentional consequences of us not showing the butchering process, the meat process, because it was gory. At some point, when my grandfather was doing things in the 50s and 60s, if you would have showed somebody butcher an elk, that would have, it would have been epic. It's just too gory for them. They weren't prepared for that. So the industry avoided that portion of the hunting, and we focused on the trophy part. When I use trophy, it's about matching wits. And when you have a bull elk that is mature, and I can tell it's mature because his antlers are of a certain size, a certain class, that is true management. That's where you can manage a herd. Wow. One bull elk will breed 25 cows. So in order to manage a herd's size, to keep from disease, to keep from overgrazing, to keep from all of these different factors, you can manage it the easiest with a bull elk or a bull or the male species. Trophies, there's a misnomer out there, and you talked about this, that there's guys out there and they go kill elk, they take a photo with the head, they cut the head off and they go home. That is illegal in every state in the U.S. In fact, that holds higher fines and higher penalties, including jail time, than if you killed it out of season without a tag, but you consumed the entire animal. You consumed the meat, shared it with your family and friends. That would be less of what we call poaching than if it's wanton waste, where you leave the animal and don't take the meat out. You are required to take the meat out. We're trying to educate people in that this isn't an or, it's an and. We take the trophy, I take a photo with that mature bull. Number one is a remembrance of that hunt, because it's an epic adventure. Every time it's an adventure. There's adversities, there's things you overcome. There is, it is a camaraderie with the people that you're with. That's a reminder of that feeling, of that hunt. And then we we process that animal, and then, obviously today we cooked some of it up and fed your crew with an elk that I shot this fall. And we get to share that with people around us. And it's organic, 100% organic. There's no GMOs in it. It is as pure as you can have. In fact, that elk, from the point the trigger was pulled to the point we ate it, I've touched it along the whole way, the entire thing. And it's no different than growing carrots in your garden. And you go, why do they taste better? Because they're yours. Because you did it the right way. They're not processed. They weren't in a freezer truck or a produce truck for 20 hours as it crosses the country and back and all that stuff. It's organic. It's yours.
The one word that stood out to me is you said management, and like my analytical Asian brain gets it. I'm very analytical, and when I look at management, and it's vague and often indefinite in terms, you don't have a grasp or understanding. But when you measure things, when you have a metric for things, like a good, I mean, in the sports analogy, good performance athletes measure the details, right? And that's often how they're successful. So I could see the relationship between looking at it as a sport or looking at the very niche details to analyze, because I often look at people who are against the trophy hunt and they just kill an animal and they're good because they say, I killed the animal, I harvested the meat. But it's like, how much do you know about the animal that you harvested? Because you had no unit of measure, you just killed what you killed. And what's the difference between the two if the entire point is harvesting an animal, enjoying that experience and sharing that experience tangibly with your family and friends?
Right.
And it seems like what I like about you and Eastmans and what you guys are doing is the fact that you're not abandoning a lifelong American tradition, and often across the world, where this name has gotten a bad rap. You're focusing on the education of it.
Right.
Scott, what are the ways that we had talked about a couple of projects in the future and things that you guys are doing, but what are the ways that your guys are educating the market, the consumer, to understand, one, what hunting is, what trophy isn't, and all the things that you guys are doing?
So, for instance, this is a great opportunity to talk about an example, and we have to talk about it. We have to actually speak about it. You can't educate people and not speak about a problem. You can't not address something head on, but there's more than one way to look at it. So I was just thinking about this as an example, that Ike and I killed both 2 incredible mule deer this year, but they are incredibly different for a variety of reasons. And so I'll use this as an example. Ike's broke what was called the 200-inch, I call it a holy grail buck. So he got into that group. His buck was old. I killed a buck that it didn't have any trash. It was a 3x3, but his frame was big enough that I sent Ike a picture where I wanted to keep the velvet that's on his antlers. But I couldn't get it in the freezer. Like, it was too big. The frame was too big to get into the freezer. Wow. 2 very different animals, but they're unique examples of, I'm a believer. I believe in Jesus Christ. So I believe it was created. So when I'm looking at this animal as, if I call it a trophy, it's a creation of something that I have the utmost respect for. Both are different. So from understanding that it is a trophy, there's an age class associated with that. I killed probably a 7.5-year-old mule deer, and I think Ike's was probably So we killed about as old as they can get.
Wow.
These animals have outsmarted us. And so as a creation that deserves respect, when I call it a trophy, it's not a term of me conquering that animal, even though it matched my wits, but it's a representation that this is the highest caliber of what we could hunt. I passed multiple bucks, and we've got video of Ike passing multiple bucks because we wanted them to reach maturity. 2 very different animals, and they're both trophies to both he and I. In our own minds, they're incredible trophies. I want to break the 200-inch mark someday. I'm convinced I'm just going to keep killing 3x3s and 3x4s. I've got this habit of finding them, but that's
because you hold true to your value, which is maturity.
Yeah.
And where you're hunting, you're finding mature bucks that are 3 points, and that's management, and that's a trophy in every sense of the word.
Yep.
And it's also a progression. You're talking about the Holy Grail is a 200-inch deer or a 370-inch bull elk. It's a progression. You didn't start there. Your first buck wasn't a 3-point, mature 5-year-old. Yeah, it's little.
Yep.
But you filled the freezer, and you did that so many times, and then you went, okay, I'm going to take it to the next level, and I'm going to take it to the next level. I'm going to up my game every chance I get. Yep. And it's a progression that filling the freezer is always the thing that we focus on. I mean, we've both done this, where here on the last day of season, I will kill something to fill the freezer. If the freezer needs filled, I will do that. It doesn't have to be a trophy at that point. It's about sustenance. But up until that point, I'm trying to up my game.
And one of the things that I do, I'm not above getting a cow tag, because that plays into that word management, because if they're offering cow tags, it means that they are above this word called carrying capacity. And so when they shoot to manage an area, they look and they say, all right, this particular hunting unit or area can sustain so many elk. And once we have more elk there than what we should, it will start negatively impacting the mule deer herd. So you've got this relationship balance between the two. You have this balance that you're looking for. And so I will get those cow tags to fill the freezer. And even though I'm going to apply for a hard to draw bull tag, I may not shoot a bull that year because I want to find that oldest, most mature bull that I possibly can. And if I don't find one that meets that qualification, I'm still helping manage because I have that cow tag. And so I can fill the freezer with that cow tag. So I had that this year on the hunt that I had. I had 2 tags in my pocket when I went into the backcountry in Wyoming. And that's how that works. And so the area that I hunt deer, it's a different area. They manage it for maturity with the buck deer. They don't offer any doe fawn tags there. They do this on purpose to keep this herd number high, but also the quality of the animal, on the male side high intentionally, because it's a world-class area.
And they have a lot of different factors that manage that deer herd versus elk in the winter. I mean, it's one of the hardest. It's one of the hardest places in the lower 48 for winter range. Mm-hmm. It's also, these deer travel, I mean, they have them radial collared. These deer are traveling 250 miles one way to get from summer to winter and then back again. And they're having their fawns, these does are having their fawns in the middle of that. I mean, they don't have to manage the doe population. Mother Nature's doing it for them. In fact, so much so that they're having to help Mother Nature along with the human impact, highways and fences and urban development. And so the state and other organizations are helping keeping those migration corridors open for these deer so that they don't get completely wiped out.
Yeah, it makes sense to me in it's like the due diligence of conservation. It's like I like the specifics of looking at every little detail. One of the things I want to talk about is you have a database that you guys have formulated in imagery that helps the hunter understand better what he's getting into. Talk some details, because it used to be part of the periodical, but now it's evolved in technology. Mm-hmm. What's that look like, and then how does somebody get tied into that?
So what we did is we took that original vision of Ike Eastman to share the ability to hunt out west, and it moved into the magazines to what's called the members research section. Guy Eastman.
It's not the Mrs. section, as my wife once thought when we were dating. She thought it was the part of the section for the ladies.
Hunter's dating website.
Yes, got my thing.
She's like, there's nothing pink in here.
So the members research section, Guy took it, he massaged it, made it better, then we standardized it. That was about 2015. The first year I wrote the Nevada MRS, and we standardized it and made it so that you could get as close as possible, where we've got a chip system where blue chip, green chip, yellow chip. State to state, we did our best to make those match. So blue chip obviously is the best, and we want people to understand that it takes a lot of effort to draw there. So states like Colorado, it could take you 20 years of applying for points if you choose to make that your strategy. And you put that there, and we put it in the magazine in a form where it's easy to see inside. It's charts that's easy to read. But the problem was that we'd only put 100 in there, kind of depending on the space that we had in the magazine.
About 25%. Actually, It's less than that. It's like 10% of the actual data. And the charts aren't just area specific. The charts it's data. It's, okay, this specific unit 71, is a green chip, and here's why. It's got X amount of tags versus it has 25 tags, and there's 3,000 people that apply for it. It has middle grade terrain, so it's not high country, it's not desert, it's somewhere in the middle. It has it has a percentage of public land versus private land. Yep. So all these factors go into if it's a blue chip, the high rated chip, or if it's a green, which is mid-level, or if it's yellow, or if it's white. White is, we don't even talk about those because it's not considered feasible, or those areas have, for instance, management objectives, like they're killing cows in they don't have bull tags there. It's all cows, something like that. And so that's how it is in the MRS in the magazine. But we were only able to put because of printing and postage, the post office and all that stuff. We're only able to put 10% of that information in the back of the magazine's MRS section.
And so what we did is we took all that data and we put it into a digital sortable form with visual representation. So think a heat map that changes every time you do the setting. Yeah, you and I walked through it and I showed you that.
Yep.
And so it changes every time. So I go in and I check our data when I want to look at different things I'm confirming inside Nevada. I'm looking for long-term trends. I do that in Wyoming as well. I do all my research inside what's called Eastmans Tag Hub. So taghub.eastmans.com, and we set it up where we want to make sure that everybody who gets in there gets a lot of value out of it, but they also get what they want. So we set up different subscription levels, different ways of doing that. But it was all 100% about the guy who wants the data. Another guy I did a podcast with, he got in there and he's like, man, this is for me. I can nerd out on this. I can really get into it.
And there's 4 times more data in Tag Hub than there is in the back of the magazine, because we're able to put areas that are yellow chip areas, but they might appeal to an audience or somebody that is just filling a freezer. They aren't to that, they haven't upped their game or aren't on that progression, they're beginning of it. And so they can draw that tag every year or every other year. We didn't put all that stuff in the magazine. It is in Tag Hub because it's sortable, it's easier to find, and you can say, okay, I have 2 points in Wyoming for mule deer, what can I draw? And you're able to narrow it down specifically of what your interests are.
I just love the attention to detail in the things. Like it seems like science in a lot of ways. And when you have historical data, when you have atmospherics, that's setting the hunter up for the best chances for success. And there's a legacy. Maybe there's like a new generation that's against it because they're just against it. They don't understand why, but there's a legacy generation as well that just doesn't like the new ideas and technology integrated into the system. But it makes you a more practical and more, I think in a lot of ways, more ethical hunter when you have better information and you're not just winging it like a lot of people do.
And you don't have to wait, some of these blue chip areas, you could wait 20 years to draw it. Who wants to wait 20 years and not hunt for 20 years? I want to be in the field every year. And so I want the best opportunities. Yeah, I might keep those points and someday hope to draw that blue chip area. But I'm applying for areas that I can hunt every year or every other year in all 11 Western states, which Tag Hub and MRS cover all 11 Western states. So you have the best opportunity to stay in the field, fill your freezer, and start going down the road or continue going down the road of upping your game.
It's amazing. Scott, can you give us some of the outlets that you guys are currently in right now, social media wise, content wise, website wise? Because you guys have a lot and different. I mean, for me, it's like demographics, right? You almost have a channel for every demographic, who no matter how you want it.
Well, we'll start with social. So if you like Facebook, if you're still like that adult class that likes Facebook, probably like the one generation right above my age, we've got a Facebook page. Eastmans Hunting Journal is there. We are on Instagram as well. We're trying to do a good job of keeping different content both places. Different people like some different things, and based on where you're at.
Facebook seems like a conservation place.
Yeah.
Instagram's cool photos. You can flip through a bunch of photos fast. Facebook's where you ask a question, answer a question, read a little bit
more time and engagement.
Right.
Then taghub.eastmans.com is where you find, if you want to do your hunting research and find that's where that is at.
There's a ton of different options. Everything from if you just want Tag Hub to if you want the print magazine, Tag Hub, plus get in the gear. When we do gear giveaways, we draw somebody out of the Tag Hub audience and give them a backpack or a rifle scope or a rifle.
Well, we're giving away an antelope hunt.
I want one of those.
So, we can talk about that. We can talk a strategy for that afterwards. And then we've also got a lot of other growing and expanding platforms. We launched Wingman a few years ago, which is our bird hunting side. So turkeys all the way to goose to duck, that's there, and it's been great. Todd Helms is the face of that. He's a lot of fun to watch. He's very entertaining, but he's also very good. He was a teacher by trade, and so he'll take you and make you feel like you're there. He'll educate you while making you laugh.
Awesome.
And so he's also got a podcast, Wingman Podcast, that's available on iTunes, it's available on SoundCloud, also available in Google. So it's very easy to find, accessible. Eastman's Elevated is our flagship podcast. So that's where you've been and spoken with Brian Barney. I'm gonna brag on Brian a little bit. He is, without a doubt, one of the best archery hunters I've ever met. Like
Really?
I put him up here as far as archery hunters go. His skill set, his ability to find and kill mature animals. The reason he got an in with Eastman's is he was literally in 6 straight journals with success stories.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah. Brian, you promised me a black bear hunt. Don't forget that. I'm gonna hold you to that.
Okay, we can talk about that. We can make that a possibility. So, Brian's done an excellent job with Eastman's Elevated. He's grown it. If you want to learn all the tips and tactics, listen to every episode. Download them, start listening, because Brian does solo where he'll walk through the highs and lows of missing a stalk, or he'll have somebody on that he can interview that is another excellent hunter, and the back and forth that they have, you will pick up more in education from that. And then we've also still got the print journals. Those are going great. Find those at eastmans.com if you want to subscribe to that. What am I forgetting?
Eastman's Hunting TV is on the Outdoor Channel Thursday nights. It's been on there for 20 years. We got Beyond the Grid, which is our YouTube online TV show. Dan Picard does a really good job in YouTube has a different audience than the linear Eastman's Hunting TV, and so he does really good speaking to that audience and making it fun. Everything from prairie dogs to he just went on a hog hunt in Texas and to Tajikistan, which is a Marco Polo sheep hunt. I mean, it's really well done. We have Flycast. Brian also he's glutton for punishment. He also came to me and said, "Hey, I want to do, instead of just Eastman Elevated, I want to do one on fly fishing because I love fly fishing." Sure, let's try it. See what happens.
I want to get involved in that. We got good fly fishing in the backyard here, and it's something that, like, you think you know until you go out with a guide and you realize all the knowledge is per geographical area and region.
Yep.
There's so much knowledge to be learned there.
And Brian does a really good job finding guests that are geographical. Find somebody from Utah and talk about their local fisheries, and find somebody from Montana, or he's originally from Washington, so he'll do a big thing on steelhead. Probably coming up, he'll do a big YouTube and a podcast thing about steelhead. So
that's awesome, man. I look at you guys as, I've always had a lot of respect for you guys before we even communicated, and the reason that is because of your professional approach and expertise. That's family ran, owned, and operated, which to me is very important in business. There's so many businesses being bought out by the Chinese and all these conglomerates.
Yeah.
It's hard to put your finger on a company that has an organic, grassroots story. And I think that's the most impactful thing. That's why I like partnering with you guys and your salt of the earth kind of guys as well. And I look forward to what we're going to do in the near future.
Yep.
I think the survival aspect integrated into hunting, into the outdoors at all, is always a good contingency. And I just appreciate you guys' time and the opportunity to learn from you guys.
Thank you. Thanks for the same.
Yeah,
I've learned a ton from you guys just today.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you.
Appreciate it.
Till next time. Thanks, guys. Oh, by the way, if you're watching this on that, give that subscribe a tap, a thumbs up. But look in the notes in the section, because there's a lot of links for everything that Eastmans is doing. We'll make sure that we give you the hyperlink for that so you can quickly resource that. Thanks, guys.